Dave, I'm going to give you some credit because there are other Republicans who are singing the song that you've been singing for months now about the concern of electability for some of these Senate candidates. But I want to ask you, though, because what's the path forward for finding that sweet spot of a middle ground? Because obviously the base, by electing Trump and endorsing candidates that, Trump endorses, they're trying to send a message to say the status quo establishment candidates aren't getting the job done. They're not standing up to the spending. They're not standing up to people who want to put biological males in female sports. They're not standing up to people who want to destroy police departments. They're not standing up. They're not fighters. So how can we fight? What advice would you give when picking a candidate to find a fighter who's also electable?
Well, I think you really bring up a very good point. And I would say, first of all, a lot of it is the system, because I think certainly most of people who run for Congress are decent people who are trying to do the right thing. But they get to Washington and they have to make a decision. Either go with the system or not hang around for very long. And I said one of my major problems with Washington is I know myriad people in the private sector who would sacrifice their careers over principle. I can count on one hand, which is convenient for me, the people that would do that in the public sector. In Washington, very few. I mean, Liz Cheney is one, but even in her case, she's got a national name. This is part of her grand plan. This is a small battle that she's losing in the overall war. That's how I see it. But look at Adam Kinzinger. He's not running for re-election. Look at, 8 of the 10 people that voted to impeach Trump. 4 of them retired, 4 of them were unseated. And the ones that survived, you can argue it was only because they were in open primaries. So, that sends a bad message. And that, again, is where Trump has been so damaging, because he doesn't care which candidates are best for the country. He doesn't care who's most qualified. He just cares about relitigating the 2020 election. And that's why you have people like Laura Ingraham, to her credit, who are saying, the party needs to move on from Trump. Elections are about the future. They're not about relitigating the past. And so you're starting to see more and more Republicans who, even though they haven't been never Trumpers from the start the way I have, who saw how malignant he was going to be from day one, they're at least saying, we need a different candidate in 24. But the problem is that I think it's the system. But to answer your fundamental question, I think that we need to get candidates. And by the way, there are some candidates. I think people who have been attorney generals who are running for governor. I think some people who are qualified businessmen, like you take a guy like Bill Hagerty in Tennessee, he was elected in 2020. He's someone who was ambassador to Japan. He worked for Bain Capital. You may not agree with his policies or maybe he's too religious for you, but he's very qualified. He's a serious guy. So those are the kind of people, I will support those people, even if I don't agree with them, because they're qualified and they care. That cannot be said.
And there's no religious test for office.
And there's no religious test. That cannot be said about J.D. Vance. That cannot be said, and I would really appreciate some acknowledgement on Herschel Walker. I mean, his incoherence and ignorance are beyond cringeworthy. I mean, they are breathtaking, and I would love some acknowledgement that he's a bad candidate, which you still haven't given me. But anyway, moving forward on that, the party is going to pay the price. They had a chance to take the Senate. It's not going to happen. I think Georgia is gone. I think Arizona is gone with the Peter Thiel protege, Blake Masters. I think in the end, the states that are more red, like Ohio and Wisconsin, I still have my doubts about Mandela Barnes. I think he's very progressive. They haven't defined him yet, and Ron Johnson has proven that he's a survivor. But I think that with Pennsylvania gone and Nevada and New Hampshire looking more winnable for the Democrats, I think it's going to be a tough slog for the Republicans. And Mitch McConnell acknowledged that. And it shows you how much the party's changed, because 4 years ago, he would have been in control and you wouldn't have had these candidates. So that's how the party has become Trumpified. But your final thoughts?
Well, I think that the media certainly has its thumb on its scale and always wants the Democrat to win. But I think the Nevada race is competitive, and that could be a pickup. Senator Cortez Masto.
Yeah, that's the biggest weakness for the Democrats. That's their most vulnerable seat, I think, is Nevada, definitely.